the haunting memories of war and death. The unresolved remorse and invisible wounds that have not yet healed.
I need to do more, and I need to find the rest of them. They're out there. I convinced myself that they're there.
They returned to Vietnam after half a century, believing they could alleviate the pain of those whose loved ones had died in the war.
I put it away for so many years, but now that I got involved, it's consumed me.
For Bob Connor and Richard Magner, this is a journey of healing, a journey to find those who have yet to return.
Bob Connor and Richard Magner, two U.S. veterans you've seen in the previous clip, used to fight in Vietnam in the late 60s. They have recently embarked on an unforgettable trip to survey and provide intel on nearly 20 mass graves of Vietnamese martyrs located across 4 provinces of Tây Ninh, Bình Dương, Bình Phước, and Đồng Nai. This crucial information is hoped to assist local authorities in conducting excavations that could bring thousands of Vietnamese martyrs back to their homeland. So what's the story behind this mission? We'll find out in our Talk Vietnam today with our 2 guests, Bob Connor and Richard Magner. Well, welcome to Talk Vietnam, gentlemen.
Thank you, Lena.
Yeah. So how are you after such a trip?
We're still kind of taking it all in. It's been awesome. So many people welcomed us, very welcoming and gracious, everyone. I can't be more thankful.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is, I believe this is not your first trip to Vietnam. So how different is this one compared to other trips?
Oh, completely different. I mean, it's just like Rich said, as far as the meetings with the provincials and the district offices and people in general. It's you know, they're giving us the applause, so to speak, for the recognition of finding the graves and working the graves, trying to find out exactly where they are and the effort that we put into it. So they appreciate that, and you can see that in their face when we show up.
What about the first time you've set foot in Vietnam? Tell us more about your first time here in Vietnam.
In 1967. It was just as hot as it is today, for sure, and loaded with uncertainty.
Right.
We landed at Tan Son Nhut, Saigon Airport. We were bussed up on an Air Force bus, which just a bus we just didn't expect because this is a war zone. What are we doing in a bus? But anyway, we got to Benoit for myself and about 30 other guys at least. And you know, from there it was just a normal get used to it weather type of situation, get your equipment, get your gear, and you know, the normal introduction process that we would go through no matter whether you're Air Force or Army. And then eventually get into the work of doing whatever your job is.
Right. How about you, Rick?
I arrived just after the 1st Air Cavalry had moved south from I Corps and 2 Corps. And actually I arrived in Benoit and was sent north or to the Highlands to An Khê for a week of training, and then assigned to my base in Dao Tang. So I ended up flying primarily in Bình Phước, Binh Duong, and Tây Ninh provinces during my time.
What was your understanding of the war back then?
My mother had sent me a book while I was in flight school entitled Vietnam, edited by Martin Gelman, which was a collection of many essays all about Vietnam and the history. So I had read that pretty thoroughly, and unfortunately, as a soldier, we end up just doing, you know, what we're told. And my duty was flying a Cobra gunship pilot. What my duty was to escort the Hueys, the lift ships, on what we called combat assaults into landing zones. So to try to suppress any fire that they may be receiving so it would be safe for them to land, depart the troops, and then take back off.
So how was your understanding of the war then, Bob?
In that day and age, how old I was 17, 18 when I graduated from high school, and here I go into the service. And at that time, I wanted to do it because I felt the purpose was to stop the communist movement into the South. But as time goes on in Vietnam, you begin to see things and hear things and experience things that make you wonder why. What difference are we making? You know, with what is going on in front of me and around me, and the things I hear from other soldiers, and you know, such as the Army or Marines that I might come across on the base. My thought was, what difference am I making again? What difference am I making to this process of the war? And no, it's not going to work out.
Richard Magner dedicated his military career to being an attack helicopter pilot. He was in battles in various provinces around Saigon. While flying his helicopter, Richard captured images of Vietnamese soldiers being buried in mass graves. He finally left the battlefield in Vietnam after being severely injured during a mission. Bob Connor served in Vietnam from 1967 to 1968 as a U.S. Air Force security sergeant at Bien Hoa Air Base. He witnessed the base being attacked during the 1968 Tet Offensive and saw the sacrifices of Vietnamese soldiers. These events haunted Bob for decades.
Now let's talk about the attack on the east side of Bien Hoa Air Base. Can you tell us what happened, what you saw?
What I saw was from the water tower on the base. This is now 11:30 at night. I'm up on the tower, and all of a sudden I hear a shot fired, and I walk around the wall, and I see eventually 2 rounds in the shack. 2:20 in the morning. Now the battle starts off the east side, and the berm, or the south berm of the 101st fires first, and now the whole berm lights up, firing at the VC, running toward the base, because that's all he saw were guys just running for the wire, our wire. And then we opened up less than about 2 minutes later. They were trying to come through the fence line, and that's when the K-9 handlers picked it up, and that's when the air base opened up on them.
So in what condition did you find information about Bien Hoa Air Base again? You were helping your granddaughter.
I was going to do a project
researching.
with her. She came to me and she says, "Can we do a project about Vietnam?" And I said, "Okay." I said, "What do you want to do?" "Well, I don't know." After that conversation, she came back a month later, and then she says, "I don't want to do it. I'm going to do something different." Okay, fine. Well, that's when I went back on Google Earth, and I posted at the location where I knew there was a grave as a result of the battle. It was the only grave that we knew of on the base. And I dropped a pin on it, and it gives you an area. At the time, they had an agreement with Panorama, and you could tell any story you wanted to, include photos and everything else. All I did was I just made it nice and simple, is that at this location is a mass grave of approximately 150 VC/NBA, buried on or about February 2nd, 68. That's all I put.
Right.
And it got noticed.
Right. What did it lead you to?
The first thing that happened was I received a letter from a gentleman. His first name is Chi, and he was all excited about this grave because they've been looking for years for graves outside the base and haven't been able to find anything. So from there, I responded to him and told him that there's definitely a grave there. There's no doubt about it.
And then you got an invitation from Colonel Mai Sun Chien.
Yes, that was the colonel that she told me about. The colonel will be very happy. So if we can find a second witness. So I found my commanding officer. He's willing to do it. And I said, well, if you want to go to Vietnam, they're waiting for us.
What were you thinking when you got that invitation from Colonel Mai Sun Chien?
I wondered what I was getting myself into. I had no clue.
Right.
Because I was thinking of the first grave the entire time until we went, and I was on the base. It changed a lot, mainly because of the overgrowth. In a normal U.S. Air Force base, you will not see any trees.
Did you recognize?
It was hard to recognize beyond the tree limb. It was just so thick. I mean, I knew the perimeter road like the back of my hand, but go off the road looking for a grave, no way. There was nothing in there anyway as it is but tall grass, maybe 2 feet high. that was it. Now you're looking at trees that are 40, 50 feet high, and it's pretty thick.
Right.
And that's where the grave ended up being, was at the south end of, was in the turn of the road on the inner side, about 30 yards inside that turn.
So what went through your mind at that time?
Go for more. There's got to be more, especially after we found out about the 2,500.
So after the first few days, having no success in finding anything, did you feel scared?
We weren't scared. We were disappointed and really ticked off at ourselves that, you know, we were apparently wrong. You know, now were they digging in the right spot that we told them? You know, who knows that?
In March 2017, Bob Connor returned to Vietnam for the first time since his service, seeking where he fought alongside Colonel Martin Stromes, the commanding officer at Bien Hoa Air Base who had directly overseen the burials of Vietnamese soldiers after the battle. However, contrary to Bob and Martin's expectations, they could not pinpoint the exact location of the mass grave within an expansive 30,000 square meter area. Nearly a month of searching yielded no signs of the mass grave, so Bob and Martin returned to the U.S., restless and uneasy. It was only about a week later that the mass grave was identified, thanks to Bob's intel. The relics and remains of Vietnamese soldiers were gathered and solemnly interred by the Đồng Nai Provincial Military Command. A reunion after half a century. For Bob Connor and his associates, this first success devised a new method for finding soldiers' remains based on information exchanged and coordination between American veterans and Vietnamese search teams.
So how, the moment when you received the news that, oh, they found the grave?
No, I was elated. I was excited.
Of course.
I went to the rest of the family and said, hey, they found the grave. They found the grave. Yeah. I really was. I was really happy that they did find it. And, you know, you read before you come to Vietnam about Vietnam and its culture, and you read about the spirits and the souls and closure and all that, and it finally hits you that this is it. These people are finally going to have the spirits and souls reunited and obtain their closure that they've been waiting for over almost 49 years at that point of not knowing anything where they died.
Right.
Now it's a matter of the rest of them.
And did you feel a sense of relief somehow?
I felt relief that I found the first grave, but then I felt almost right behind that the need that there's more out there, and I'm going to look for them.
Right.
And that's what I did.
Right. So after they found the grave, the funeral was organized.
Yes.
I believe that it was a very special one, and many people came, family members of those who, of the martyrs. And there was one particular image that touched you very deeply. 1,500
people that attended, according to Colonel Chin. You know, their eyes set on the 80 caskets that are up front, flag-draped coffin. The procession starts now with the members of the Communist Party from Hanoi, and then the military from Hanoi, and then military and Communist Party members from Đồng Nai province. Then the honor guard were carrying the casket, flag-draped casket, watching the woman follow the casket. She, I can't help getting worked up over it. You could see in her face. I stopped the video and I zoomed in to see what was being just so distorted that I had to stop the video. And I zoomed in on her face and I could see the tears all filled in the bottom of her eyes, carrying the picture of the individual that passed. And I could see the two cheeks run down with where tears had already run down and passed. And that was brutal to watch.
Why? Why was it brutal to watch?
You felt that even though you didn't, you felt you caused what necessitated the death, and now here you are watching this woman in closure. You know, not that I even fired around during Tet. It has nothing to do with it. It's just that, it just said to me out loud that the war was definitely wrong.
I want to ask you, Richard,
Yes.
about your determination, because just like Bob, you dedicated so much time and energy in helping the Vietnamese side to look for our missing soldiers. So where does that determination come from?
Well, it all goes back to a mass grave that I witnessed during the war, from the 23rd of February, '69, Battle at Giao Dang, and which I happened to take a photo of while I was flying, just a matter of a day or two after the battle, as the grave was being filled with bodies that they had placed all around the perimeter of Giao Dang, which was a fairly large base. And I'd taken a photo of it and hadn't thought about it actually for years. I pretty much put most of my thoughts about Vietnam and the war away, tucked them away somewhere, and spent most of my time dealing with other things and dealing with moving beyond being wounded and having my jaw blown off. And then one night watching 60 Minutes, 1994, Steve Koff did a piece called Spoils of War. Just a 20-minute piece typical of 60 Minutes. And in the teaser, he brought up the Elsie Grant, March 8th, Elsie Grant. Well, I was wounded, Elsie Grant, March 8th, 1969. And after that piece was over, I contacted Steve Croft with the information that I had, and he then pointed me to a veterans organization, and I put together a package and sent it to them. And unfortunately, they didn't respond. And I followed up with phone calls and other letters, and still they didn't respond. And this was, again, 1994. I had a young family. I was working a pretty intense job, flying, managing an aviation program at a hospital and flying there as well. So I just put it on the shelf and didn't really think much about it till I began planning for my trip in 2017. And at that time, I did a number of searches on the internet to see if I could find out more about the mass grave at Elsie Grant that I was a part of. And I did. And so when I was on my trip here, by that time, Elsie Grant was underwater at Lake Giao Dang. But I did go visit the Tam Bien Martyrs Cemetery north of Tây Ninh. And then after returning, I decided that I want to really put a lot of effort and try to locate the Giao Dang mass grave. And working with our two Vietnamese partners, Ting and Thông, we were zeroed in on that, but it has yet to be found. That snowballed, so to speak. And I began working with Bob, and then before I knew it, we were in the 10s, 20s, and now we're probably 150 battles that we're working on, all with potential mass graves.
Bob Connor, Richard Magner, and several other American veterans are the first links in a new search methodology that compiles and cross-checks information from American witnesses. However, witness information alone was insufficient. Decades after the end of the war in Vietnam, areas that were once battlefields have completely changed, This is where architect Thông and engineer Thian come in.
Sau khi có thông tin từ các cựu chiến binh Mỹ về cung mộ tập thể của một trận đánh ở một cái khu vực nào đó, thì chúng tôi bắt đầu đi tìm kiếm thông tin từ các cái tài liệu báo cáo của quân đội nhân dân Việt Nam, cũng như là các cái báo cáo chiến trận của quân đội Mỹ, và kể cả các cái giấy tờ mà của bộ đội Việt Nam mà bị quân Mỹ thu giữ sau trận đánh.
Thian searches through tens of thousands of pages in document archives across the U.S. He did not overlook even the smallest details. Meanwhile, Thông searches for tactical reconnaissance satellite images of battlefields taken during the war, using algorithms to match initial witness-provided images, then comparing landmarks to pinpoint the area for focused search efforts.
Cái việc này thì nó đòi hỏi các cái việc làm nó rất tỉ mỉ, và sau cùng đến cái ảnh vệ tinh mới nhất thì chúng ta có vị trí chính xác của nó tương ứng với công trình nào hoặc là cái địa mốc nào ở thực địa. Cái điều này sẽ thuận tiện rất nhiều cho các cái đội tìm kiếm.
Từ một cái điểm nhỏ trên bản đồ tác chiến ngày xưa, bây giờ xác định lại được tọa độ, và thông qua ảnh vệ tinh thì cái vị trí gần như là tuyệt đối chính xác.
With coordinated information processing from both sides, the research team have achieved significant success in collaboration with the local military command. Since 2021, they have helped locate and collect hundreds of martyrs' remains in Tây Ninh, Bình and Bình Dương. These achievements motivate the team to continue pursuing this silent but meaningful mission.
How did you get the trust from the people who you emails, the witnesses who?
Sometimes that's not easy. I sometimes would send out an email, mass email, from the guest list of the website for that unit. Sometimes like up to 50 different people. And you may be lucky to get just a handful of responses.
Yeah.
And then you try to run down their phone numbers or follow up with emails for personal conversation.
Right.
And description of where they may remember where the mass grave may be.
I believe it was such a tedious process. So how did you get the trust, or how did you persuade the sources?
When you finally drill down and you finally get someone who's now responding to you, it's like a shell shock initially because you didn't expect it. It just came up in an email or a message, whatever the case may be. And right away you put your mind on it, well, which grave is this guy calling me about? Because there's no means of identifying it with a name. So it's a stranger. We both don't know each other. So now, here we are talking about it, and I said, this is the reason why. I go through a common speech, repetitive comments, so to speak, regarding why I'm doing this. It's only for the families. So I have to work on this as I'm talking to them. Where are you, and what are you doing? What was your major role after the battle? Because I'm talking to this guy now, and he's stepping back in time less than an hour or two after the battle occurred 30, 40, 50 years ago. That's like you trying to remember what your third grade classroom looked like.
Right.
Right.
Impossible.
Describe everything.
Yeah.
You can't, you
Right.
know. So you walk them through it as to I try to give them, eventually in time, I give them a copy, if I have it, a copy of the base, a photo of it, or sketch, whatever I have, unless he has one. He may give it to me. But in any event, we both end up with the same document. And from that, we work on how do you know about the grave? And it's, well, yeah, I went out and I picked up the bodies. I did the cleanup. I'm one of them that did the cleanup. Okay, well now it's a matter of identifying different areas on the base. I try to keep it simple. I just use the clock, points on the clock, 5 o'clock position, 7 o'clock position, whatever it may be. And I ask myself, okay, which way are you walking off the base? You walking off the left side, which is the west side, or are you walking off the east side? And sometimes I'll ask a question that I know what the answer is because the other side has a road on it, the other side doesn't. But sure enough, he's walking out where the road is because that's easier, so the opening is already there. And then we go through the mechanism of, okay, how far out are you? And I tell them concentrate on the berm. I don't want to know about your tower or nothing else unless it's obvious. But we're going to concentrate on the berm as the point and the numbers on the clock to keep it simple.
So what can you say about the accuracy of that method? You know, trying to get information from the recollection of the people involved.
It's very difficult to say because at this point in time, other than the Benoit locations, we only have Frontier City. What we have found that usually the grave is certain azimuth off the, starting at 12 o'clock around the, 12 o'clock being north, around the base. And that we do know that most of the graves are usually somewhere between maybe as close as 50 meters to 200 meters off the perimeter. And so we need an azimuth and then an estimated distance from the veteran. And then by using the sketches, aerial photos that we may be able to find, and now the last few years, satellite photos, and then overlaying them on Google Earth, synchronizing them on Google Earth, then taking photos of those images, sending them back to the veteran to give us even more feedback, we found that we've been able to then zero in and feel much more confident about where the grave may lie.
Right. Yeah. So we try our best with whatever.
Yes, and as
sources
Bob
we
said,
have.
sometimes even with even working with one veteran may take months. And certainly working on one battle site can take well over a year.
Right.
You know.
So it requires a lot of patience
We're still working
and
on
hard work.
we're still working on battles that we started half a dozen years ago, and hoping to get more information.
Right.
Yeah.
So here we have the map of potential locations for mass graves across 4 provinces: Tây Ninh, Bình Dương, Bình Phước, and Đồng Nai. So I want to ask Mr. Richard Magner and Bob Corner, how did it come about?
Okay, this is a result of when we knew that this trip was going to come about. We wanted to come up with as many sites as we could that we had a high degree of confidence in to make reports of, to give over to the Vietnamese authorities. So on this map here, there are a number of red stars, approximately 20, and also 3 yellow stars. Yellow stars depict ones where graves have been found, and the red stars are ones that have a great potential of finding a mass grave.
So maybe you can help point on the map.
Well, yeah. This is the area of the Benoit Air Base itself. The airstrip is running east to west. The first grave that we found was supposed to contain 150. It was later discovered that they could only find 80. The other grave is so far, to date, the largest grave that we have identified by location, contains 670 martyrs. The next grave we found was down here at what we call Gate 2. One witness spotted both this grave at Gate 2, and the second one over on the southwest area near what they called Gate 3. If all these graves were excavated, there's 1,600 martyrs here.
Huge number. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We were attacked with 2,500.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Yes.
So in our visit over the past couple of weeks, we started in Đồng Nai province at Bien Hoa Air Base. And then we worked our way to Bin Duong and Bình Phước. But along the way here is Balmoral, where a mass grave was discovered this past spring, primarily due to diligent work of our Australian partners with Thông and 10. We continued on up Bao Bang and also then to Dao Tiang. And from there we went to An Loc and then on up to Loc Ninh. All these sites have massive deaths. And we have very good, solid information on where the graves may be. There's Sui Cut, Butak, Khartoum, and then Elsie Grant was right in this general here, and then Ike, all these. Here's one that over here, Crook. This is probably, at this point in time, this is our most promising one. 300 to 350 missing dead right there.
Vinh Bridge Hamlet, Cho Tang District, Tây Ninh Province, was once the site of the U.S. Army's Crook Base and the location of a fierce battle in 1969. Information about a mass grave here had been provided early on by American veterans. However, years of searching had failed to yield results. During this trip, the research team handed over the most detailed records they could muster to the local authorities. Hoping the search would soon proceed, the team surveyed Vinh Bridge Hamlet and many other locations across 4 provinces.
It's important that we're coming to meet with the provincial authorities directly and hand over information to them because they're the ones that can carry out excavations. It's the basis for building trust and understanding among our countries and people.
In total, 20 record dossiers on search locations were handed over to the local authorities and the Vietnam Martyr Family Support Association.
Có những cái mộ liệt sĩ chúng ta là chốt 300 người, có những mộ là 130 người, mộ ít nhất là cũng 10 người. Nếu chúng ta khai quật được hết thì cũng có thể lên đến 3.000 liệt sĩ được trả lại tên, hoặc chí ít là cũng đưa anh em về nơi yên nghỉ ở nghĩa trang liệt sĩ.
The contributions of veterans like Bob and Richard and researchers are crucial for healing the wounds of the past. For Bob and Richard, these efforts are the most meaningful things they can do with the limited time they have left.
Do you think, is there any solution that can help accelerate the process?
The aerial photography that we're trying to get cataloged, again, that's not an overnight process either. And our veteran community is rapidly diminishing that will have memories or recollections that can help us in this regard. But yet getting the word out to those remaining veterans is probably really the only thing we can do real time. And getting them interested and contacting our group, our team, both within Vietnam and within the United States.
How long is the window of opportunity, in your opinion?
Less than 2 years, probably.
Less than 2 years?
Well, us old guys are dying right and left.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that that resource is rapidly diminishing.
So this is an urgent issue.
Yes.
And people
Yes,
should
it
know
is.
more about it and
Yes.
start to take action. So from our estimates, there are 200,000 martyrs still missing.
Yes.
And 300,000 unidentified.
To me, that's almost like an infinite number. So I try not to think about it in that regard. I try to think about it, what little we can do, we'll continue to do.
Mm-hmm.
Can we put a dent in 200,000? It would take years. But in the meantime, we're going to do all we can. Yeah.
Yeah.
The process is just continual. I mean, it's almost like we're sitting here today and not thinking about a grave, and all of a sudden tomorrow someone's calling about information about a grave, wanting to contribute information, knows about a grave. Or we look out amongst ourselves and all of a sudden we think of something which draws us to another location and draws us to more information. And that's how it happens.
Right. And it's a joint effort, and everybody can contribute.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very collaborative across all channels.
Mr. Lâm Hồng Tiên and Mr. Nguyễn Xuân Thắng are the two Vietnamese that have been working with you for many years. So what can you say about their roles?
We would go nowhere without working with them. They're our partners. And it's very much an equal collaborative relationship. I'd probably talk with Tan and Mr. Tang at minimum once a week for the past.
Once a week?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
For the past half a dozen years.
How many years?
Half a dozen years.
Wow. How did you deal with the time difference, the time zone difference? And then language barrier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, it works out pretty well. They both have very strange hours, much more so than I do.
12 hours difference?
Yes, 12 hours difference. That's the easiest way to think about it. And Tong, he works around the clock, I think. I don't know if he ever sleeps.
He followed your schedule.
Same things for Tan. You know. So, sometimes I say, well, I'll have to wait a few hours for an answer, and I'm sure they think the same thing about us.
Yeah. No issue with the language barrier because those
Google
are quite...
Translate is wonderful.
Yeah.
Works like a champ.
After the success at Binh Hoa Air Base, Bob Connor was approached by many Americans who wished to return wartime relics to the families of the fallen. Among those was the helmet of martyr Nguyen Ngoc To. From the oath engraved in Chinese characters on the rim of the helmet, loyal to the party, devoted to the people, overcoming all difficulties, defeating all enemies, to important details about the soldier's name, unit, and enlistment date, Bob and his Vietnamese colleagues possessed the clues to locate and identify the family of Martyr To. On October 22, 2023, the helmet was returned to its homeland.
Khi gặp ở Philadelphia, ông Bob có nhắn với tôi rất nhiều là cái mũ nó đã bị bẹp rồi. Thì ông mới có dặn dò là Thắng hãy cố gắng là giữ nó nguyên vẹn, đừng có thêm cái vết bẹp nào nữa và giúp họ đưa tận tay với gia đình. Ông Bob nhắn là cái gia đình với tất cả những cái mong mỏi là xoa dịu giảm bớt cái nỗi đau tới cho gia đình. Tôi đã mang cái mũ để cho gia đình đúng như cái gì tôi hứa với ông.
Hôm nay kỷ vật này về thì chúng tôi tưởng chừng như thơ còn đang sống mà trở về cùng với gia đình. Tôi cũng thay mặt gia đình xin chân thành cảm ơn.
So we have just seen a very moving footage of the return of the hat.
That was the first one.
Right, to
Yes.
the family of martyr Nguyễn Ngọc Thơ. So, how do you feel about this mission after all?
I feel it's needed. These families, in this particular case, this one family now, as an example, can actually hold something in their hand that was owned by the soldier that died. It lasts forever. It's passed down to generations. They'll always remember him. It's a vital piece of their heritage. And to receive it, it's a golden opportunity for them. I finally met the family on this trip, and that was a big moment.
And you cried.
And because again, you see the emotion, those tears, just do it to you, and you know what's in the background. You know what she's thinking, and her and the rest of the relatives all now know that this guy is back after all these years. No different than the woman walking behind the casket after 49 years of not knowing. Mm-hmm. Now they have something that can actually hold on to.
Right.
The other woman has a grave to go to say the prayers and pay homage to. These people can do it right in their home, mm-hmm. and that to them is fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's a reward. That's what it's all about.
And that's why it matters so much.
Yes.
Yeah. 2025 is a big year that celebrates the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam-U.S., of the ending of the war. What is your hope for the 50th anniversary?
I want to see Vietnam succeed. Aside from the graves, aside from the war, and there's a lot of things going on in Vietnam that are a benefit to Vietnam as it grows forward, which it should. There's nothing holding them back, nothing.
So what message do you want to send to people out there about this mission?
Well, I would just hope that our health allows us to continue to do this, and that people spread the word, and we could use more volunteers. Yes.
Yes.
Open to all the help we can get.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for traveling halfway around the world and be here with us today. Mm-hmm. And we're looking forward to welcoming you back, maybe next year.
Well, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So the valuable information that Bob Corner, Richard Magner, and the whole research group gave to Vietnam today is the hope of thousands of martyrs' families out there who have been longing for their loved ones for half a century. However, there are still a lot that need to be done before it's too late. According to the Ministry of National Defense, nearly 200,000 martyrs' remains have yet to be retrieved from battlefields. I hope that after watching this show, you can be part of that honorable mission to ease the pain of war and strengthen the relationship between the United States and Vietnam. And that's it for Talk Vietnam. Thank you, and see you again next time.